I am 2 days into my 75 hard YouTube edition challenge, and I already want to give up. Luckily, I have a plan. Well, actually, it's not really a plan. It's more a series of 4 questions that I'm asking myself. And I wanted to share these 4 questions with you because I think it's a really good framework if there's anything in your life that you feel like giving up on. This actually came in the middle of a workout that I really wanted to give up on. I committed to a 30-minute workout. I got 5 minutes in and I was ready to just give up. I really didn't want to keep going. And sometimes that happens. And then I just kind of suffer and don't really have a clear idea of whether or not I don't know. Sometimes I give up, sometimes I don't. This time when I was barely into this workout and I really wanted to give up, I started running myself through a series of questions to see kind of why I wanted to give up and if I should give up and if I could just say maybe get to 7 minutes in the workout and call it a success, or if I should really try to push through for this full 30-minute workout. And these are the 4 questions that stuck with me and helped me determine that, yes, I do want to keep going. And even though this sucks, I am going to just keep suffering through it. So with that, let's get to the questions. First, I'm going to explain the 4 questions, and then we're going to see what happens when we answer them. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, am I suffering? Whenever we find ourselves in a position where we want to give up on something, it's probably because we're suffering in some way. And that doesn't mean that we have to be hurting or that the end of the world is happening or that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to us. It just means are we uncomfortable? Is this experience bringing about feelings of uncertainty? Is this experience starting to give you some kind of mental anguish or physical anguish too? Because like I said, when I'm working out, I tend to be suffering in those moments, and it's not necessarily fun all the time. The second question we need to ask ourselves is, am I safe? And this is important because if you're suffering, you also need to check in with yourself about your own safety. Am I about to do something, or am I in the middle of doing something that will cause me harm mentally or physically for the long run? Sometimes things feel really bad and uncomfortable, but we're still safe. They're not actually going to hurt us. Just because I'm suffering trying to sit down and write the short story I've been thinking about doesn't mean that I'm in danger. I'm still safe, but we do need to check in, because if you are exercising and you're lifting a weight that might be too heavy for you, you are unsafe. So you're not only suffering, but you're also putting yourself in harm's way, and you don't want to be doing that. The third question is, are you engaged with the self in some way? And the way that I think about this is either through self-discovery or self-reflection, self-improvement, whatever it is. If you're trying to better yourself as a human being or try to explore yourself and your own experience, then that's probably why you're suffering to some degree. So we just need to remind ourselves that we're probably in the process of improving some aspect of ourselves or our lives that is going to make us a little uncomfortable, and that's just kind of okay. And the final question we need to ask ourselves is, am I still interested in the outcome that this activity, this task, this process, whatever the outcome is, am I still interested in receiving the benefit of whatever activity or thing that I'm engaged with? If you're not still interested in the outcome, that kind of puts us in a weird place. So let's see what happens when we answer these questions. First, I'm going to start with what happens when we answer yes. So question number 1, am I suffering? Yes, I am suffering. I am suffering a lot. Maybe I'm suffering a little, but the whole reason I'm putting myself through these questions is probably because I'm suffering to some degree. Moving on to the second question, asking ourselves, am I safe? If you take a serious look and a serious assessment at the things that you're doing, and you can confidently answer, yes, I am safe, then that is a good sign right there. Just because you're suffering doesn't mean you're in danger. But we do need to make sure that we are safe in whatever we are engaged in. Answering question 3, Am I engaged with the self? Am I doing some kind of self-discovery or self-improvement? Any of the varieties of self, self-care, self whatever you want it to be. Am I engaged with the self? If the answer is yes, that's a good sign too, because only when we're really engaged in the self and really trying to face those uncomfortable realities is really when we're going to start suffering. When we start to try to engage with the parts of ourselves that can be improved, that we're not as comfortable with, when the parts of ourselves that make us feel a little tense and icky when we think about them, if we're confronting those things head on, or even if we're just trying to do something a little bit more simple, like exercise or eat a healthier meal, then that is still engaging with the self. And if the answer is yes, we can move on to the next question, which, am I still interested in the outcome or the benefit that this activity will provide for me? If the answer is yes, if you can confidently say you're still interested in the outcome or the benefit that this activity is going to provide for you, then that means you're probably doing something right, and it should be something you pay attention to. So if you answer yes to all 4 of these questions, my recommendation is to keep going. Because if you're suffering, you're probably doing something uncomfortable that's going to have a long-lasting benefit. Most self-care, most self-improvement, most anything that's going to actually push the needle for you and turn you into a better person or help you produce better work involves some level of suffering. It's not an easy process. So if the answer is yes, that's why you're running yourself through this exercise in the first place, because you're like, dang, I want to give up. I don't want to do this anymore. If you're safe, then you can give yourself the permission to keep going. You don't necessarily have a reason to stop, because you only want to go about the suffering and self-improvement and kind of the uncomfortableness if you're actually safe. If you're about to hurt yourself and cause some kind of damage beyond what is actually going to be helpful, then you're not really in a place where it makes a lot of sense. If you are engaging with the self, then that's a good thing, and it's honestly probably why you're suffering and why you want to give up in the first place. Engaging with myself, it kind of sucks. Sometimes I don't like it. But then I have to ask myself, am I still interested? If I'm still interested in the outcome that this activity or this process or whatever I'm engaged with is going to provide for me, then hell yeah, I should probably keep going. Because if I really want this outcome, this benefit, maybe I want a healthier body or a healthier mind, or I want to develop a better habit or rid myself of a habit that no longer serves me, I'm going to be suffering, and I have to be able to suffer in order to get to that outcome. And so if I'm still interested in that, then this suffering is worth it. And I should keep going. But hold on, this is nice and all, but what happens when we say no to one of these questions? If the answer to the question, am I suffering, is no, why are you even doing this? If you're not suffering, why do you want to give up? Maybe that's the question that you should ask yourself, and not these ones. If you critically evaluate your safety and you determine that, no, I am not safe, you should stop. Don't put yourself in danger. Just because you're suffering doesn't mean you're in danger. But if you are in danger, stop your suffering. Don't keep going. Then if you decide, no, I'm not engaging with the self, I kind of wonder why you're thinking about this process anyways, because if you're not in some kind of uncomfortable situation with some level of self-improvement or some level of digging deep within yourself, then whatever you're doing probably isn't that significant. So you should probably just push it aside and move on to something that makes you a little bit more uncomfortable. And finally, if you're not still interested in the outcome that this activity will provide for you, then you should stop. Why are you even doing this in the first place? Sure, maybe you are engaging with the self and you are safe and you are suffering, but if all of that's for something that you're not interested in, why are you doing it? And if your answer to these questions is no, you should stop. And I want to clarify that you don't have to answer no to all of these questions in order to stop. If at any time you answer no to any of these questions, you should stop. It's only when you answer yes to all of them that you should keep going. And so those are the 4 questions I've been asking myself if I ever feel like giving up. Let me know in the comments if this resonated with you, or if you have a different method for how you decide whether or not to give up on something. And as for me, I'm going to keep going because day 2 is over, and I'm looking forward to day 3.